Good evening. In a socially distanced world, Design United is an optimistic digital platform for collaborative design and connection. Welcome to Design United's 22nd Design Conversation with Sahar Mansoor, founder of Bare Necessities from Bengaluru, India. I'm Varna Shashidhar, founder principal of a regional landscape practice VSLA based in Bengaluru. I'm supported by Claywork Spaces in this endeavor. In a socially distanced world, Design United is an optimistic digital platform for collaborative design and connection. Design United was created in March 2020 during a period of intense lockdown and quarantine measures within the region. The aim behind Design United was to create an optimistic space for regional dialogue, connections, collaborations, and opportunities for young regional designers and design practices. A much needed network of support and peer mentorship during these uncertain times. Talented young designers and design studios working on design innovation with an approach that is relevant to our South Asian region have been invited to be a part of the platform. We also encourage design students from the region to share their work, be involved in the dialogue, and to be an active part of Design United. Design United, most of all, believes in creating a community of designers and design knowledge that is largely contextual, with focus on contributing to the environment and our community. Design United believes greatly in a spirit of collaboration and idea exchange. Welcome to Design United's 22nd Design Conversation with Sahar Mansoor, founder of Bare Necessities from Bengaluru, India. I'm Varna Shashidhar, founder principal of a landscape practice VSLA. I'm supported by Claywork Spaces in this endeavor. Clayworks creates flexible co-work spaces that focus on productivity and sustainability. They have a new work-from-home solution, Spot. I'm also supported in this endeavor by my very enthusiastic Design United team, comprising of young designers and design students from the South Asian region. The aim behind Design United is to create an optimistic space for regional dialogues, connections, collaborations, and opportunities for young designers and design practices. We have had several talented emerging designers join us from around the subcontinent and the South Asian region in design conversation in the past. Today, we are delighted to welcome environmentalist and inspiring entrepreneur Sahar, a champion for zero waste living, to design conversation. Sahar Mansoor is the founder and CEO at Bare Necessities, a hub for zero waste living in India. Bare Necessities was titled as one of the top 5 handcrafted in India brands by Harper's Bazaar in 2017. For her work in changing the narrative on waste in India, Sahar has won numerous accolades. She has been recognized by Google India as the most inspiring Indian of the year 2017 and a Swatch Warrior by NDTV, again in 2017. MTV India featured her as one of the 6 women redefining career paths of the 21st century in 2018. Sahar has a background in environmental policy from the University of Cambridge with an executive education program on social entrepreneurship from the prestigious INSEAD Business School. She has worked at the World Health Organization in Geneva and at the SELCO Foundation on renewable energy projects. Sahar is a climate reality leader, having received the Climate reality training from US Vice President Al Gore in 2019. She's also a climate launchpad mentor and a global shaper at the World Economic Forum. We're so happy to welcome Sahar to Design Conversation. I would like to request Sahar to please share her work with Bare Necessities. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Varna, for that very, very generous introduction. And thank you so much, everyone at Design Unlimited. I'm so excited to spend this afternoon with you. I'm just going to share a little bit about my story and then kind of discuss a little bit about why we design certain products in a certain way. And then we'll just open it up to questions. It's meant to be really interactive. So honestly, just feel free to pop up your questions in the question box or the chat box, and we'll be sure to take them at the end. So let's talk trash today. So essentially that jar that you can see on your screen is all of the waste I've generated primarily in the past 4 years. And I know that sounds pretty crazy, but that's what I'm going to do here today. I'm going to break it down for everyone. I'm going to share some tips and tricks that I learned in my zero waste journey and why I even started doing this in the first place. So growing up, I grew up in Bangalore City. I spent a lot of time in Kavindu Park. I have 2 older sisters, and my dad absolutely loved nature. So every holiday meant we were kind of jumping into waterfalls, we were coffee picking, and basically weekends just meant road trips and being in nature. I think I've been an environmentalist since I was a 3-year-old, but I think I only started identifying myself as an environmentalist when I was 19 years old and in college. Specifically, I watched this one video of this lady named Bea Johnson, who's on the screen right now. And that jar that she's holding is all of the waste she, her 2 kids, and her husband had produced in like 4 or 5 years. I remember like completely being blown away by this. But I also thought I probably could never do this. At the time, I was a college student in America. I had 3 jobs on campus. I had a scholarship to maintain. And I just, was thinking of all of the laundry list of excuses why I probably couldn't do that. But nevertheless, I was super inspired. I bought myself this very water bottle. I don't know if you can still see my screen, but from my little store at my college, and started doing little things that I could. Carry my own cloth bag to the grocery store, etc. And then one day I just walked into my dean's office and I told him, Dean Saleza, you don't have the major I want. And he said, what do you mean, sir? We have like 532 majors or something. And I said, yeah, but I want to take environmental science. That's in the science department. And I want to take environmental planning and policy in the political science department, liberal arts school. So he said, okay, sit down. And I remember we literally highlighted any course that had anything to do with the environment and just merged it all and made it my major. So fast forward a few years, I became this like absolute environmental nerd. I thought I'd be like a professor. So I moved on to the University of Cambridge, where I've studied more about environmental issues, especially associated with our waste problem. And honestly, I think the best thing that happened to me was that I didn't get fully funded for my PhD. And I had to take a break and do something else. So I spent some time at the World Health Organization in Geneva. And actually, it's kind of interesting because it's very parallel to the time we're currently leading, because it was during the Ebola outbreak. I think what really stuck out to me was how quickly countries were reacting and the amount of consensus the world had on health. And that was just so absent from the environmental rhetoric. Especially at the time, there was this whole kind of development versus environmental conservation rhetoric, and developed countries versus developing countries. And it was just kind of dominated by this blame game. So I think that was really kind of interesting to see. And at the time, the WHO leadership was also really great. So it was just something that I learned, and I genuinely was grateful for that time. Another thing that happened to me during that time was I started looking at our environmental issues from a health lens more for the first time, honestly, very seriously. And then in 2015, I moved back to Bangalore, and I was working at at SELCO Foundation, and working on various solar energy projects across Karnataka primarily was my field work. And one community I worked with was this waste picker community. And they're right by Bangalore International Airport. They're a migratory community. Of course, they don't have the luxury of having formal housing. So they're living in very informal blue tap housing that I'm sure you're all familiar with. And of course, they couldn't access electricity. So what we did was we put kind of solar panels on the tea shop, and every morning when they come for chai, they also would plug in their battery, go on for a day's work, come back and have a fully charged battery. So essentially, while working with this community, I obviously became good friends with them. And Rahman in the orange shirt, he would tell me things like, for the first time, I can see my daughter's face in the evening. And essentially, I was following them on my bicycle early in the morning before work. And I was just really kind of confronted by our waste problem. I didn't like the conditions in which my now friends were segregating broken glass, sanitary napkins, all with their absolute bare naked hand. And that's kind of when I kind of thought back to that crazy video I watched my second year of college, and I said, I'm going to try that crazy thing that Blair Johnson was doing. I'm going to try that zero waste lifestyle. I think I'm going to preach to the choir here, but we're currently living in the largest global garbage crisis of our lifetime. And currently in the pandemic, a lot of countries have basically generated the same amount of waste that they would have in a year in the span of 2 months. And the sheer amount of medical waste is something that has completely reached unprecedented heights. So I'm not going to go into all of the doom and gloom, but I'm sure you're all well aware of it. So when I first started, my zero waste journey, I started to introspect on what that really means. And honestly, when I was doing talks and workshops in the early days, I would always start with what zero waste is. But I think now it's so awesome that almost everyone knows what zero waste already is. But essentially, it's the idea that you can minimize your waste to as little as possible to basically be zero. And the idea is to send little waste to landfill or incinerators, right? And it can be a pretty ambitious goal. And I think that's the point. It's fine to kind of aim for the moon and then kind of reach the stars. But this is a philosophy that's guiding a lot of people's lifestyles. And honestly, it just kind of supports community health, local economy, and justice. So how did I start? My first few steps when I started was, I just honestly sat down with my nanny and I asked her what she used to do before shampoo started coming in this plastic bottle, right? And she was sharing all these amazing things about henna and shikakai and Rita. And I remember just kind of being really excited and inspired. I started Googling a bunch of stuff. I started taking courses on how to make soaps and whatnot. And, I think the first thing that we all do when we wake up in the morning is presumably brush our teeth. And it's often made out of plastic, right? It takes 700 years to even start disintegrating in the first place. And it never fully does. It just breaks into these tiny and tiny pieces of microplastics that then adds up in our food for dinner and in the water in which they were tried to then kind of polluting the groundwater and then trying to grow our food in that same soil. So I started using actually miswak stick and neem sticks because I was like, oh, what did we do traditionally in India? And I honestly was excited to try this, and it was super cool to read that these sticks kind of go back to Babylonian and Indus Valley civilizations. Perfect. And then essentially, I honestly just missed the sensation of brushing my teeth. So then I transitioned into a bamboo toothbrush. And at the time, my sister lived in Copenhagen. So I actually told her, hey, I found a store that has a bamboo toothbrush. It's like 2014. Can you please send this to me? So I had to wait a couple of months before she actually got here. But it's amazing now, 2020, where we are. And these toothbrushes and a bunch of other sustainable products are way more accessible now than they were. So I started making my own toothpaste. I started composting my food waste. I started carrying this little cloth snack bag, essentially with all of my snacks, almonds and walnuts. So essentially, whenever I got hungry, I didn't have to kind of go back for that bag of packaged biscuits or chips or whatever, but instead had these healthy whole nuts that were completely zero waste. And at the time, like I mentioned, I was working primarily in rural India. So I would come back from my overnight bus ride with like 3 kilos of peanuts and like 5 kilos of moong dal. So I think I was also really, really amazing to kind of build this intimacy with my food through the farmers that I was primarily working with. So in this zero waste journey, I honestly just realized that going zero waste is traditionally Indian. It's just in our Indian DNA. So some fun examples are, the notion of bazaars. We've been doing this forever. It's very democratic. You pick and choose as much as you want, instead of these Western-inspired grocery stores that are kind of pre-dictating X amount of sugar or lentil or whatever that might be. And then our stainless steel tiffins are amazing. I actually have a really cute, colorful one here, so I'm going to show that if you can see me. And essentially, this is a combination of course, food, equipment, but also a supply chain system, right? And every day, about 6,000 dabbawalas are employed in one city of Bombay alone, and delivering these amazing home-cooked meals to over 2 lakh Mumbaikars, all without generating any waste. And so much so that there are like Harvard case studies on their margin of error and how well and organized they are. And I think there's a lot to learn from it. And I think a lot of new tech startups in the food delivery space have, of course, made our lives so convenient. But the amount of packaged food and the single-use plastic that this industry is using really needs to kind of innovate and look at more circular economy models. And I think, honestly, we have the best circular economy model in the food delivery space that we can try and replicate. So, like I said, the first place I started was in my bathroom. And when I moved back to India, I had lived away for like 7-8 years, and I was co-inhabiting again with my family, my mom, and but your personal care, your bathroom is a place where you have full control about what you use and all the decisions you make, right? So I think this is the first and most easy place to start if you want to try and transition into a low impact or a zero waste or a less wasteful life. So things like using neem comb. I started using a metal razor, a stainless steel razor that you can just use for a lifetime. I stopped using earbuds. In fact, I did this talk at Microsoft, I think, and someone put up their hand and said their spouse is an ENT specialist. And over 67% of the clients who come in or patients who come in were basically coming in because of ear damage to their eardrum caused by the earbud. And actually, the World Health Organization says that you shouldn't put anything smaller than your elbow into your ear. So essentially, they're telling you not to put anything into your ear. So yeah, this kind of led me to all these experiments of making my own soap and toothpaste and shampoo and all that, which was super fun. Lots of failed experiments, let me tell you. My mom is very generous. My laboratory, so to speak, was her kitchen. So she was really, really patient. And then, of course, is our food, right? And I think this is something that we should co-inhabit with our whoever we're living with, basically. But just little things like carrying our own cloth bags, reinventing leftovers, using rags to wipe down the countertops, etc., instead of using single-use paper towels, bringing back that cast iron to make those dosas, using those beautiful ceramic jars in which your nanny used to store all the tamarind. So kind of just reevaluating and taking stock of, our current kitchen and kind of realigning it with practices that my nanny was sharing, honestly. And what I found was, while my mom was not so kind of on board with the zero waste mission, I tried to find a co-benefit that worked for her. So my mom's been doing yoga for like 35 odd years, so she's really health conscious. And I started buying produce in a little cardboard box delivered to me every week from Coorg and Ooty, these little, primarily from Ooty. And they're like just subscription boxes, and every Tuesday they kind of drive up at like 5 a.m. and keep it outside your door. And for my mom, she was just so on board because of the quality of the produce. She just loved it. She's like, this is fresh and raw and amazing. And she could tell the difference between some of the store-bought produce that she was getting, and something that was completely organic and natural. So for her, I kind of looped in the health benefit, and it was coming in a zero waste way, and that was kind of just a by the way for her. But for me, that was my primary motto. So yeah, this is kind of a photo of some of the things that are in our pantry and office as well. And how we go zero waste. Okay, the next thing is just closet. The way we clothe ourselves just communicates so much of who we are. And I wanted to make sure that's alignment with all of these things I say I care about and that I'm doing. So, of course, I started to read more about the fashion industry. In 2015 or something, I watched, or 16, whatever it was, I watched True Cost. And I kind of realized about all of the human rights violations in the garment industry. And essentially, again, didn't want to be part of that problem. And so when I was going on all these trips in rural Karnataka, I would just buy lots of local fabric. I would stitch it up with my local Masood tailor, who's been stitching my Eid dresses since I was like a 5-year-old, and would just make more contemporary dresses out of that. And I just wanted to stop buying any fast fashion or having anything to do with that, because of course, reading about the Rana Plaza incident where thousands of garment workers were killed because of the building collapse. And even now, actually, during the coronavirus pandemic, we heard about a lot of factory workers who hadn't been paid, and during this time. So I think aligning my consumption choices with my values became really important. And then I started to get a little creative as well. So I'm super, super sentimental. So, getting rid of stuff is quite difficult for me, especially earlier. So I took all of my favorite t-shirts from college with all of the activities and trips that I've been associated with. And I made it this really cute blanket, for example. So just finding utility in things that I, otherwise would have made thrown out was also important to me. I made a little, used an old t-shirt, cut it up to make it a tote bag, for example, and stuff like that. Cool. Be cognizant of time. Cool. All right. Travel. Well, not a lot of us are doing this now, but being sure to carry like my own headphones, for example, so I don't need to use the ones in the aircrafts that are packaged in plastic, gonna go through chemical cleaning, only to be packaged in plastic again. And also, you often don't get to finish your movie because they come and collect it earlier. So carrying my own headphones, for example, carrying my own stainless steel straw. So this is just kind of a quick day in the life of Sahar, fixing up my bag, taking my nuts and almonds for my bike ride, bringing my stainless steel tiffin to corner house or any ice cream parlor. I love to engage with kids, to do a bunch of DIYs and talk about waste. That is literally talking about waste is my favorite thing to do. Shopping bulk as much as possible and using kind of beeswax wraps, which I'm going to talk more about actually in a minute. Cool. So I think the best thing and the first thing that we all can do to be part of the solution about the waste crisis is just composting our waste on site or at home. And I think through the pandemic, we've all kind of gotten more intimate with our homes and our waste. A lot of us maybe didn't have the luxury of having house help the entire time of the lockdown. And I think we just become more cognizant of the waste that we produce. So using a daily dump khamba or any matka or pot that you might have at home is amazing. It has holes over here, as you can see, which basically helps just aerate the mixture. And it's super easy to do. All you need to do is put a dry layer or a brown layer, which is premix powder, dried leaves that are crushed, even shredded cardboard, and then your wet layer like your banana peels, any organic kitchen waste, and then again do another brown layer. And you just kind of keep layering and layering, and basically it takes about 3 weeks and you're completely done. And just by composting, you are reducing about 60% of waste from even like leaving your home. So that's the single best thing that you and I can do for the environment. So the next thing I learned as my zero waste journey was that we live in a world with landfill destined products, and we really, really need zero waste products. Of course, I'm sure you all have seen photos and videos of waste on the beach, for example. And I think that was how we created Bare Necessities. We essentially saw that there is a need to create high quality products that are accessible, that are solutions and are alternatives to single-use plastic products. And that using ingredients that you can recognize, that you can pronounce, that you can spell, and that's kind of why we started Bare Necessities, to make it very, very easy and accessible for anyone else who is looking to live more mindfully. So all of our products are made using ethically sourced raw materials. So, we use turmeric in our soaps, we use green gram, yellow gram, orange peel powder, rose petals, lavender petals that are, sourced from Kashmir, coconut from Kerala. And all of this kind of just celebrates the diversity and beautiful ingredients that are abundantly and richly found in India. And that was kind of the product sourcing story. A lot of our actually raw materials are sourced from a bunch of the farmers that I used to work at SELCO in my old job. So as you can see in the top right, that's a solar panel. And this is Sitlingi in Tamil Nadu. It is a FPO, Farmer Cooperative Organization. And we source our green gram and our yellow gram from there, for example. And then our packaging is all in recyclable, reusable, or fully compostable packaging. So, this soap, for example, is printed all on recycled paper. It is, more expensive than just regular paper, or even using plasterized paper that would probably last more for branding purposes. But it was a very intentional call to use recycled paper. And that is completely compostable, so it can go back to the earth. So yeah, these are little things that we like to do. I'm going to share. Yeah, so this is our manufacturing team. This is Shabu. That's orange peels. I'm actually going to go into a little bit more detail about a couple of sourcing stories. Awesome. So I'm going to give some examples of products that we make and why we're designing it in a certain way. So for example, that's beeswax wrap, right? And this is a great alternative to aluminum foil or plastic cling film. And it's just made from organic cotton cloth. It's got beeswax and it's got jojoba oil. And we just use heat basically to, you can either iron it or you can use an oven to do that. And essentially you can use it multiple times. And whatever you wrap, suppose it's half an apple or a sandwich, or you're just covering a dish, it literally just takes the shape, molds into any shape that you like. And we have in multiple sizes. We also have these cutlery sets. Basically, this was great. We would sell them kind of in these lifestyle pouches that you can get. Again, this is using waste textiles that otherwise would have been landfilled. And essentially, you can keep this in your glove compartment or in your workstation and work. So if you do happen to Swiggy or you get lunch delivered to you by one of the tech startups, you can say, hey, I don't need the single-use cutlery, you can just use this. So this has your straw and a bunch of stuff like that. So, and then we designed it in a way that is accessible, and that's why you can kind of pop it into your bags and glove compartment, etc. And then we use bamboo, and I think bamboo is a very interesting material. All of you product designers would probably know this, but it is the largest, fastest growing plant in the world. So it takes only 3 weeks to grow completely full size. And there are different kinds of bamboo that are grown, that are native to South India, but also China. So each geography also has like a different strain of bamboo. So we started making straws, for example, out of bamboo. We kind of tied up with this professor at Christ College, and we also kind of worked with making these straws more accessible, which are made out of coconut leaves. So they are completely compostable and way more price accessible. So we worked with a bunch of coconut vendors all across Bangalore City to help them transition out of paper and plastic straws to use these straws that are completely compostable, with a grant that we got from a US-based organization. And then stainless steel is amazing. I mean, I'm South Indian. It's very, very traditional in our culture to have, when you get married and stuff, you all of your dishes and buttons and everything are typically stainless steel, and then you get it engraved with your initials or all that stuff. So we decided to use stainless steel, and then we got our bear kind of engraved on it. But the idea is that it's 3304, which is like a very, very high grade, food grade stainless steel, and it lasts a lifetime. It's rust proof, and you only need one for your entire life, versus like 1,000 that you would otherwise just sip on mindlessly for like 10 seconds and toss it up. And then we sell it with this level cleaner, so essentially you can clean it. So it's functionality and thinking through other things as well. And then, of course, the government straw cups. We actually don't produce these; we just retail other ones from these amazing partners that we love and respect. But the idea is that medical grade silicone is basically used. Like once you're done, you can burn it, incinerate it, and it just basically becomes ash. They've been using it since the 1920s with no negative health impacts associated with it. And one plastic bag has about 9 plastic bags in it, which obviously will never kind of decompose and just break into microplastics. Tampons use a lot of cotton. Cotton uses a lot of fertilizers. It's white, so it's bleached, which honestly drains your body of a lot of healthy liquids and fluids and stuff. So this is a great alternative for menstruating women. This is a super cute collapsible cup. So this looks like a little keychain almost, and you open it up, and you can basically carry this for your chai. You can also gift this to your security uncles at your offices, because I'm sure you've noticed that there'll be a chai wala cycling around, and then they often use just the same use little paper cups that are lined with plastic, and any hot liquid at that temperature actually leaches a bunch of toxins at that high temperature, and then you're consuming that. So this is good for juice and apana and everything. So on the go. This is something that again we really love. This is my base. This is a makeup removing wipe. So you can essentially use this to take off your makeup, cleanse your face, rather than using single-use cotton or even using some of those multi-layered wipes, like wet wipes and makeup removing wipes. So this is again made by a lovely woman across Bangalore, and it's handmade using organic cotton wool. So whenever you're done, you can just cut it up. This and even the beeswax wrap, you can just cut it up and put it into small pieces and put it into your garden or in your compost, and it will just go back to the earth once you're done using it after a year or whatever that might be. So yeah, these are some examples. Some other ones are, of course, using coconut scrubbies for your dishes, using stationery made out of recycled pencils, for example. So the idea is to just kind of looking at all of the material that we that's around us, what is traditionally Indian, what we used to do. Even using the neem comb, for example, is great because it helps with the health of your scalp actually. And our neem comb vendor actually says that he has been working. It's a big family legacy, and essentially they've been working with. They've been doing this from the Mughal Empire and whatnot, and they've helped a bunch of kingdoms and kings working, to make all of their combs from already not is his story. So yeah, this is just few examples of products that we design and why we design it a certain way. And I thought it would be maybe useful to kind of open up to questions. And we're here.
Thank you, Sahar, for sharing your personal zero waste journey with us. Adapting to the local context, really very relevant and relatable to our region, and really living the talk and your road to entrepreneurship with Bare Necessities. We really appreciate it and we find it inspiring. With this, we'd like to open the session for conversation. I'm very happy to introduce and welcome our moderators for this conversation. Architect Apurva Dhamdire, who studied architecture at VIT's PVP College of Architecture, Pune. Our second moderator today is Sharvari Rajwari, a final year student of architecture from Brick School of Architecture, also Pune. Welcome, Apurva and Sharwari. With this, we would like to open our session for conversation. Audience, we welcome your questions and we'd like to invite you to type your questions for Sahar. Thank you.
Hi, Sahar. It was amazing to hear from you. The presentation was really, really amazing. And I'm sure it has inspired all the members of the audience today. So, we have a few questions for you. So, I would ask Apurva to go forward and ask you the first one.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Sahar, for an insightful presentation. So my first question to you would be, what triggered or pushed you to take this up as a full-time job?
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, I was doing a bunch of talks and workshops every weekend, and I was just basically talking about waste to anyone who would listen. And it got to the point when I had to like skip work and take days off work to kind of do some of these talks and presentations. And I was like, I'm 25. If I don't do this full time now, when will I? So yeah, I think I just kind of plunged and dived in and thought I'd try this entrepreneurship thing for a while.
Okay. Thanks. Over to Sharon.
So the next question for you is very related to what you just answered. So we actually wanted to know how you have made this venture a completely zero waste mission. And I'm sure you've had challenges, along the way in terms of completely switching over to the other side. So if you could shed some light on that.
Yeah, definitely. There are definitely lots of challenges, like you can imagine. I think the FMCG industry that we know it hasn't seen any innovation in like 30 odd years. So when you're trying to do something that is not mainstream, there's always pushback. It also requires you to spread awareness. So I couldn't just sell my products. I first had to do all of the talks and workshops, basically to spread awareness. And only then, by virtue of that, maybe they would potentially purchase products, right? So I think, just one example that I can think of is that we use paper tape, for example, to send out all our shipments, right? And they only come in a big box of 10, and that box is 3,000 rupees. Versus like if I had just used plastic tape, I can get like 9 for 300. So I think there's a cost barrier. I think the entrepreneurship landscape is maybe a little underdeveloped, especially for female entrepreneurs. It's backed by data. Women entrepreneurs, it's find it harder to kind of access funds. So I think there are a bunch of challenges along the way, but I will say that I am super, super lucky to have an amazing, supportive ecosystem of friends and family. Friends have written like my legal terms and conditions for my website. Another friend on my logo, who's a botanical illustrator, Nirupa Rao, who I love. And we've grown up and spending time in Kavindu. So I think it's a lot of teamwork, and I'm super lucky that I also have this phenomenal team now at Bare Necessities to kind of grow this vision together.
Thanks for the answers. So Apurva, can you take up the next question?
Sahar, it's hard to make an impact when it comes to environmental issues that we don't have control over, and you decided to do so on an individual level. So, my question to you would be, what obstacles or challenges have you faced along this journey?
Yeah. Honestly, I can go on with challenges, but I think in the environmental space, it's very easy to get frustrated because you don't know what impact you're making. And I know I felt that as like when I started working with solar energy space, it was great. And at certain points, you really feel like, man, am I making an impact? And for me, I think living a zero waste lifestyle was a very, very tangible way in which I could visualize my impact, right? And I think that's why I chose to do it in a transparent jar. Have it right here, and to keep all of my waste in a jar, because that builds this transparency and accountability, and I know my waste, and I'm building this intimacy with my waste in this transparent jar. And I think you can't change what you don't know and what you don't measure, what you don't see. So I think that's why I kind of chose to put it into this jar. And for me, it was really tangible. I'm like, okay, so in a lifetime, I'm going to use 300 toothbrushes, and if they're all going to last on this planet for 900 years and outlive me and my great grandkids, if I ever have them, is a very tangible. This was like a very physical way, something that I could touch, feel, and observe that could have this impact. So zero-waste lifestyle just became extremely a tangible way in which I could live my values, and that's why I kind of chose to go this route. And like anything, there are always a bunch of challenges, but like, it's like a fitness journey. When you first start, it's like, oh man, vegetables, and then after you're like, wow, avocado and vegetables, and you love it, right? So I think you're just building that habit and making it part of your lifestyle and who you are, and then it just becomes easier.
So then, what are your thoughts on maintaining a zero waste lifestyle in the current pandemic situation that all of us are facing right now?
Yeah, great question. Honestly, I think there are lots of myths. We just like look at something that's packaged in plastic and we think automatically that it's safe for cleaner, and that is not true. For example, just using a mask that is reusable is works just as well, and you can just keep washing them out. You can have a bunch of rotation, you keep washing them out with hot water and sterilizing them, and that is perfectly fine. You don't need to use single-use one at all. So I think just kind of re-examining our lifestyle. Nature has a perfect way to wrap itself. You don't need to buy oranges that are then wrapped in cling film. Oranges have that beautiful peel. Nature has its way of wrapping itself, so we don't need that. I think a lot of it is just a lot of myth busting around how we can live more sustainably and take the necessary precautions to do so. So I think that's good, and we should kind of do whatever we can to kind of reduce our impact in that direction. And then I think a lot needs to happen to kind of invest in waste infrastructure systems in a decentralized manner. So, for example, if we were to have some of these really cool, actually, low-cost innovations that do on-site, management, basically, they're basically small incinerators that were typically used for pads and menstrual hygiene products that can now be used for masks and protective equipment and gear that is being used especially in hospitals. And honestly, our waste problem is a big social justice issue. I mean, I have so many things to talk about in terms of that's an angle of it. But if you do on-site segregation and managing of your waste, especially all of the masks, etc., then you're not subjecting the waste workers and waste pickers to collect that waste, possibly kind of get unwell because of the virtue of some of the waste being disposed. So kind of leveraging existing technology and using it in models that we require now. So I think whether that is making it more mainstream to have these decentralized units across hospitals, apartment complexes, offices, to do on-site management of masks and other protective gear, for example.
Okay, so would you like to share your future plans and what are the future agendas for the Bare Necessities?
Oh, we have an online course that makes it easy and accessible for anyone else who's looking to consume more mindfully. So that is one which is been really, we have like 600 plus students, and that's really fun. The idea is to make kind of this knowledge as accessible as possible. So I think that's one. And growing the team, coming up with new products that make sense and that people need and want. So I think that's basically what we're trying to do.
So you actually have a series of webinars, blogs, posts, and even podcasts on your website right now.
Yeah.
So is there one that is particularly close to your heart which you would want our viewers to definitely go and check out?
Oh my gosh, that's hard to pick one. Yeah, it's a good one. But maybe the first one, which is working, it's actually person who made this enterprise called Peoplecraft, and they use textile waste that would otherwise be landfilled to make amazing other products. So yeah, maybe that's a good place to start.
Thank you for answering all the question?
Yes, of course. Thanks so much for asking me.
Actually, I have one more question for you.
Yeah.
So, looking at the amount of electronic waste that we're generating currently, what do you think is, a good solution, or how do you deal with electronic waste like batteries, etc., given the Indian context, especially?
Yeah, definitely great question. I think it's super, super important for all of us to segregate our waste, right? There are only few kind of recognized e-waste recyclers in each city. So I think, making sure that you know them, and then if we could, so for example, at Bare Necessities, we have a little collection box, and everyone kind of will deposit their old cable or battery or whatever that might be, and then we just aggregate, and when we have enough, we send it to Ward 111 to kind of give it. There's also enterprises like Bin Bag and Cash. Each city has its local municipality website and locator. For example, in Bangalore, you can go to bnp.com and find the closest dry waste collection center to you. So it's super, super possible to segregate and recycle that separately. So it's not contaminating groundwater, which then you're trying to grow the food in and all that stuff.
Thank you for that. One more question for you. How can we, as designers, or as a design community, how can we impact waste landscape through design? So I'll just repeat the question.
Great question.
Yeah. How can we as designers impact waste landscape through design? That was my.
Yeah, no, great question, Simran. I totally agree. And I think we all need to think like designers. That's the solution, even the non-designers. And I think ultimately, what are we doing? We are going to re-engineer, reimagine, and redesign everything, right? The way the products are made, the way they're packaged, how they're distributed. So literally, we need everyone. It's just a time for us not to say, "Oh, I'm a formulationist. Oh, I'm an engineer." No, it's a time for all of us to come together and come up with these interdisciplinary solutions that will be the solutions to all the complex problems that the world is facing. And it requires us to look at it from a systemic approach and not from a linear perspective and not from a product perspective. We need to really reimagine the way products are consumed, bought, distributed, manufactured, all of that. And that's why it needs all of us to think like designers. So I think, the vision is really circular economy, that we need to look at system, like really the whole way of distributing it and all of the above. So I think it's a systemic approach, one that is very, very generative, that one that is kind of mimics or mirrors natural life cycle possible as far as possible. And yes, basically one that's really, really regenerative. And basically circular economy principles, so like we're just designing waste out of the system. That's what we all need.
Well, thank you so much for that. I think this is just the tip of the iceberg, and there is so much more that everyone as an individual can do. And I think if, like you rightly said, if we come together as a community and become more mindful, it starts there. And really hats off to you for bringing this to everyone's attention, and we really love and appreciate the work that you're doing. Thank you so much.
That's super, super generous of you. Thank you so much for all of the work that you all are doing at Design Unlimited. And it's super, super infectious to see all of your enthusiasm and energy, and keep up all of the great work.
Yes, I think.
Thank you, Sahar and Simran, and our moderators, Sahar, for sharing your wonderful work with Bare Necessities, but also your very meaningful approach, which goes beyond your entrepreneurship journey, and how you've incorporated this within this journey and the kind of impact you're creating. So we wish you the very best with your journey. I would also like to thank our moderators and audience, Clayworks and DU team. Have a great evening. Thank you so much.